When you write Java programs, there is a rule that you should declare the variable before you use it. When we declare a variable, we should specify the data type of the variable. What type of data you are going to store in that variable. For example, if you want to store your marks is a number with sometimes with a decimal point, right? In that case, we use floating point numbers. For example, number of family members in a family, so which is a number like 4 or 5, which is an integer. Similarly, if you want to store your name, address, you should specify or you should declare a character. So in this way, what type of data you are going to store, that will be specified by the data type. In Java we have many data types like integers, characters, floating point numbers, strings, boolean, etc. We are going to discuss all these things in this class. Data types in Java. Here, what is a data type? A data type means what type of data you are going to store in the computer. So here, data type means type of data. See these two words, if you interchange these two things, you can get the meaning of the data type. Data type means type of data, what type of data you are going to store in the computer. And for example, here if you see, if you want to store your age, generally 18 years or 19 years, right, which is a number. In order to store a number without decimal point, we use an integer which is int, declared as int. Then if you want to store your name, generally in our name we don't have any numbers, right? Our name is full of characters, small a to small z or capital A to capital Z. In such a case, we use characters. Then if you want to store our address, yes, still we can use characters, because in our address we can store our name, father's name, then door number, all these things we can store in characters. Then if you want to store the weight, for example a number with a decimal point, for this purpose we use floating point numbers, float. Here I think you have observed the difference between these two things. One is here it is a number without decimal point, here it is a number with decimal point. Then we have boolean data type also in Java, which is used to store either true or false. And this is the classification of data types. We have primarily primitive data type and non-primitive data type. Primitive means primary data types. Then primary data types or primitive data types, once again numeric and non-numeric. Numeric, once again, and they are classified into integers and floating point numbers, whereas non-numeric, characters and booleans. We will first concentrate on this part, primitive data types part. Now primitive data types, numeric, once again non-numeric, integer, floating point. We concentrate on this part now, numeric part. Numeric, integer and floating point. Here integer data type we have still 4 subclasses or subcategories. One is byte, short, int and long. We should not use capital letters when we declare the data types, right? Small letters you should use, int, short and byte. What is the difference? The difference is the size they occupy in the RAM or memory. Byte, we know byte means 8 bits, right? So the size of this byte data type is just 8 bits. In these 8 bits, one bit is used for sign. Sign means either negative or positive, right? To store the sign, we use a single bit, and remaining 7 bits are used to store the number or the data. The range is -128 to 127. We can store negative numbers as well as positive numbers. Now next comes short data type. What is the size? 2 bytes of memory it occupies. This is the range. Now here also 1 bit is reserved for sign. Remaining all the 15 bits are used to store the number. Then comes the integer. Integer occupies 4 bytes in Java, not 2 bytes, 4 bytes. This is the range. And finally long. If you want to store a very long number, a big number without any decimal points, you can use long data type. This is about integer data type. Here comes the floating point data type. Here two subtypes we have. One is float and double. You know the difference between integer and floating point. In integer we can store numbers without decimal points. In floating point, numbers with decimal points, or numbers with fractional part we can store in floating point numbers. Then here float and double, what is the difference? Single precision, double precision, or it occupies 4 bytes, double occupies 8 bytes. This is the range. For example, if you want to store a number with 6 to 7 decimal digits like this, float is enough. You can store this number in float. But if you want to store many digits even after the decimal point, what you need to use? You need to use double. The difference is size, and the range is also different between float and double. Next comes the non-numeric data types. These are not numbers, right? Non-numeric means not numbers, characters and Boolean data types. We know that char is used to store a character data type. What are characters? Alphabets, small a to small z, then capital A to capital Z, then digits, single digits 0 to 9, then some other special characters like hash, star, all these things you can store in characters. But the thing is, here character occupies 2 bytes. In C and C++, character takes only 1 byte or 8 bits, because in C and C++ we store ASCII characters, whereas in Java 2 bytes, character occupies 2 bytes. It stores almost all the characters in the world, I mean all the languages, because Java uses Unicode system. It occupies 2 bytes to store a single character. Then comes the Boolean. Here we have only two values, either true or false, either 0 or 1. So these are non-numeric data types. Now we discussed numeric and non-numeric data types. And finally, non-primitive data types. The data types which we discussed until now, they all comes under primitive data types. Then these are not non-primitive data types: arrays, classes, and interfaces. So we have a separate chapters for these three things. We will be discussing these three things in the next coming classes. Thank you.